Imagine looking at a family from the outside and seeing nothing but happiness. A mother, a father, three beautiful children, a comfortable home in Duxbury, Massachusetts. Lindsay Clancy was a labor and delivery nurse. Her entire profession revolved around helping women bring babies safely into the world. She and her husband, Patrick, had three children, 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and their 8-month-old baby, Callan. To people who knew Lindsay, she was a loving mother. There were family outings, snowy days, smiling children, ordinary moments that looked completely normal. But beneath that ordinary family life, something was changing. After the birth of Callan, Lindsay's mental health began deteriorating. And what makes this case so difficult to understand is that she wasn't simply a woman who suddenly appeared to have problems. She was seeking help. She was seeing doctors and mental health professionals. She was being treated for anxiety and depression. Her medications were repeatedly changed. And eventually, she became so concerned about her mental state that she entered a psychiatric facility for several days. Her family believed she was getting help, but something was happening that nobody fully understood. And on January 24th, 2023, everything would change. The months before the tragedy are central to this entire case. According to evidence presented in court, Lindsay experienced serious psychiatric symptoms after giving birth to Callan. Her treatment became increasingly complicated. Different medications were prescribed and adjusted. Her doctors were trying to manage symptoms that appeared to be getting worse. Her defense would later argue that she was suffering from postpartum psychosis and that medication changes contributed to a severe break from reality. But prosecutors would tell a very different story. They would argue that Lindsay knew what she was doing and deliberately created an opportunity to carry out the killings. That disagreement is now at the heart of the murder trial. But before the courtroom arguments, before the experts and the lawyers, there was simply a mother struggling with her mental health. And then came January 24th. Tuesday, January 24th, 2023 began like an ordinary winter day. Lindsay had reportedly spent time outside with her children in the snow. Later that afternoon, she called Patrick, who was at work. She suggested that he pick up food for the family. She also asked him to collect medication from a pharmacy. Patrick left the house. He expected to be gone only briefly. In fact, the entire trip would last roughly 25 minutes. And those 25 minutes would become the most devastating period in the family's history. Patrick spoke with Lindsay during the trip. According to his later testimony, nothing about the conversation immediately alerted him that something catastrophic was happening. Then he returned home, and the house was silent, too silent. He called for Lindsay. There was no answer. He went upstairs, and what he discovered next would haunt him forever. Patrick found evidence that something was terribly wrong. Lindsay was outside the house. After jumping from a second-story window in an apparent suicide attempt, she had suffered catastrophic spinal injuries and survived. But Patrick still didn't know where the children were. Then came the question that would change everything. Where are the kids? He was told they were in the basement. Patrick went downstairs. There he found his three children unconscious. They had been strangled with exercise bands. Cora and Dawson died. Callan, only 8 months old, was taken to the hospital and placed on life support. For 3 days, doctors fought to save him. But on January 27th, Callan died too. 3 children, 3 lives, gone in a single evening. And Lindsay survived. The fall left her permanently paralyzed. But the physical injuries were only the beginning of what she would have to face. When Lindsay eventually regained consciousness in the hospital, she was under police guard. According to testimony, she did not initially remember what had happened. And one of the first questions she asked was simple. How are my kids? She had to be told. Her 3 children were dead, and she was facing murder charges for their deaths. It is difficult to imagine the psychological weight of that moment. The woman who had spent years caring for other people's babies is a
in a
Nurse was
classroom
now
to
accused of
anyone
killing
who would
her
listen.
own
Weeks
3
later,
children.
she was dead.
But there
And
was
when
another
both
question
doctors
that
finished
immediately
testifying,
divided
the
public
defense had
opinion.
almost
Was
nothing
Lindsay
to
Clancy
ask
a
because
mother who
there's nothing to
deliberately murdered her
dispute here.
children?
Just
Or
two
was she
women
a
who saw
severely
this
mentally
family
ill
every
woman
week
who
and
had
never
lost touch with
once saw
reality?
what was coming.
That
Lance
question would
differed from
eventually
everything else.
become the
Tola was
center of
asked
one of the
whether
most
Cora ever
closely
mentioned her
watched
mother
murder
being in the
trials in
hospital. She
Massachusetts.
had. Sometime
The
in December or
prosecution and the
January,
defense
Cora talked about it in
essentially
Women are
presented
mandated
two
reporters.
completely
If
different
either had
versions
seen
of
a
what happened.
mark, a
The
bruise, a
prosecution
worrying
says
behavior,
Lindsay planned the
anything
killings.
about those
They
children
have
or those
pointed to
parents,
evidence
they'd have been
suggesting
legally
she
required
knew
to
how
report it.
long
Neither
Patrick
pickup.
would be
Was there
away
anything
and
different
deliberately
about Lindsay
used that
Clancy that
window of
day?
time.
Anything different
Their
from
argument
any
is
other interaction?
straightforward.
No.
She knew
So
what
saw
she was
text
doing.
messages
She
between
waited
Lindsay and
until she
Patrick
was alone,
Clancy on the
and
day
she
of the
intentionally
tragedy.
killed her
They were
children.
casual
The
and
defense says
affectionate.
something
Patrick to
entirely
Lindsay,
different
you're a good
happened
mama.
inside
During
Lindsay's mind.
cross-examination,
Her attorneys
Lindsay's
argue that
defense
she
attorney
was
Kevin Reddington
suffering from
questioned
severe
just how thorough
postpartum
the forensic
psychosis
analysis
and
was.
other
Did you come
psychiatric
across
problems.
a
They
search
say she had become
where
detached from
Safari had it
reality,
slit your throat to death?
experienced terrifying thoughts
I
and
don't recall.
voices. The defense has argued that
Did you
she
come
was not
across a
criminally
search? Can you
responsible
turn
because of her mental
airbags
state.
off on Kia
And that is the
Sorento?
question the
I don't
jury now
recall.
has to
Did you know
answer.
that she had a
Not
Kia
whether the
Sorento?
children died.
I did
Everyone
not.
agrees on that.
Reddington also
The
pointed
question
out to the
is what was
jurors
happening
Clancy's
inside
additional
Lindsay's
search
mind
words,
when they
such
died.
as schizophrenia,
Then there is Patrick.
hallucinations,
Perhaps
and
no
intrusive.
testimony in
Then
this
January
case
2023,
carries more emotional
the
weight
same
than
month,
his.
she killed her
In the
children.
aftermath of the tragedy, Patrick publicly asked
And court
people
will not be
not
in
to
session
reduce
tomorrow.
Lindsay to
Testimony
what happened
resumes
that
on
night.
Monday.
He
The judge
described the
telling
woman
jurors
he
today to give
knew
some
as
rest over
loving
the
and
weekend
devoted
and
to their
encourage
children.
them to keep it
But
open.
grief does not disappear simply because someone understands that another person was sick. Patrick lost 3 children in a single night, and he also lost the woman he had built his family with. When he eventually took the witness stand, he had to sit in the same courtroom as the woman accused of killing his children. He described the events surrounding that evening, the 911 call, coming home, finding Lindsay, and discovering the children. His testimony forced the courtroom to confront something beyond legal arguments. There was a real family here, a father, 3 children, and a mother whose mental health had deteriorated in ways that are still being debated. And that brings us to the question that has followed this case for more than 3 years. How does something like this happen? How can a mother who appeared to love her children become capable of killing them? Is the answer deliberate violence? Or can severe mental illness completely distort a person's understanding of reality? There is no simple answer. Postpartum psychosis is real. It is rare, but it can involve hallucinations, delusions, confusion, and a profound break from reality. But recognizing mental illness does not automatically answer the legal question of criminal responsibility. That is what this trial is ultimately about. As of August 2026, Lindsay Clancy is on trial in Massachusetts facing 3 first-degree murder charges. The separate strangulation charges were dropped before trial as prosecutors said they were duplicative of the murder charges. The trial is still ongoing, and as recently as August 12th, testimony about the children's deaths caused Lindsay to become visibly distressed in court. There has been no final verdict. So perhaps the most responsible way to end this story is not by pretending we know exactly what happened inside
Women
Lindsay's
are
mind.
mandated reporters.
Instead,
If
we can
either
sit
had
with
seen
the
a mark,
questions.
a
What
bruise,
warning
a
signs
worrying
were
behavior,
missed?
anything
Could earlier
about those
intervention
children
have
or
changed the
those
outcome?
parents, they'd
Where
have been
does
legally
severe mental
required to
illness
report it.
end
Neither,
and
nothing to
criminal
dispute
responsibility
here. Just
begin?
2 women
And
who
most
saw this
painfully,
family
how can
every
a family
week
go
and
from
never
an ordinary
once saw
winter
what was coming.
afternoon to losing 3 children in less than half an hour? 25 minutes. That's all it took. 25 minutes to turn an ordinary family home into the center of a tragedy that would be debated in court for years. And perhaps the hardest part of the story is knowing that before those 25 minutes, this was simply a family living an ordinary life. A mother, a father, 3 children, and a future they thought they had, until they didn't. What do you think happened inside Lindsay Clancy's mind that evening? Was this a calculated act? Or was it the devastating result of severe mental illness? Let me know what you think in the comments.